At this point in time, President Ramaphosa and President Xi Jinping are yet to arrive here at the Union buildings. The red carpet has been rolled out for the People's President of the Republic of China, Xi Jinping, here at the Citadel of Power at the Union buildings, with this bilateral meeting between President Ramaphosa and President Xi Jinping in this state visit, which was initially meant to be for President Vladimir Putin, but knowing that he could not make it to South Africa due to the International Criminal Court issuing that warrant of arrest, and knowing that South Africa would have had to arrest him as a signatory of the Rome Statute, it was then concluded upon that President Vladimir Putin would not make it to South Africa and would participate on the virtual platform. Their Foreign Minister Lavrov has arrived in South Africa. He did land and touch down at Waterkloof Air Force Base at about 30 minutes ago. But this state visit and this meeting between President Ramaphosa and President Xi Jinping would look at strengthening trade relations between the two countries, which are largely skewed within China's favor, and also knowing that China is pretty much seeing South Africa as, like many other international countries, as a gateway to the African continent. You know that South Africa is pushing the Free Trade Africa area trade agreements, and knowing that South Africa is one of the biggest trading partners of many African countries, and knowing that South Africa is China's biggest trading partner within the African continent. South Africa has China as its biggest trading partner in the international markets, but also the establishment of the new BRICS currency is going to be an interesting debate, knowing that President Ramaphosa in that France-Africa summit was very clear in addressing the issue with President Lula da Silva of Brazil, that the issue of de-dollarization is going to be a hot topic in this BRICS summit. But of course, I am not alone, Sakina. I am with our Foreign Affairs editor, Sophie Mukwena. Sophie, the importance of the arrival of Xi Jinping last night, the President of the People's Republic of China, the trade relations between the country, the geopolitics that will be discussed, the war between Russia, Ukraine, de-dollarization, new currency. China is very frank in saying that BRICS must be an alternative and a competitor to G7.
Well, you are correct, but I think the president laid a foundation in terms of what is South Africa's position on all these matters when he had that address to the nation, sharing his views in terms of what will be South Africa's approach in relation to the state visit, but above all in relation to South Africa's participation and South Africa being the chair of BRICS and having to lead these discussions. We know that you are correct. China wants a more powerful and forceful BRICS, but you have countries who are saying, yes, let's do that, let's strengthen it, but it should not be a competitor to G7 or the G20, and the G20, Brazil, South Africa, China, including Russia, they are part of the G20 member countries, and therefore you don't need a competition. On the other hand, we have Brazil. President Lula, you'd recall previously when he was the head of state, one, he is a founding father of BRIC then, now BRICS. Two, he is a strong supporter or a campaigner to strengthen the South-South. You'd recall him and the then former President Thabo Mbeki, IPSA, they were pushing for strengthening of the South-South. And then you have the issue of the currency. The view that's dominating is that you have to take a position in saying that let's use our national currencies when we do business amongst ourselves. There's no need to use the dollar as the international trading currency, because the issue of a BRICS currency, like you have the euro, it will take time because there are lots of issues that you have to take into consideration in relation with the economy of the world and the GDP. So the issue of the war in Ukraine, very critical, because you know that China presented a 12-point plan. President Ramaphosa is part of the heads of state and government who went to Kyiv, who went to St. Petersburg, and therefore they'll talk about it. And also linked to that will be a Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, who's arriving tomorrow and then will participate on Thursday. He's going to push for the transformation of the multilateral institutions such as the United Nations Security Council, including the financial institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF, and pushing again strong message similar to the one that he presented at the G7 now recently in Japan, that it can't be business as usual. And of course, climate change.
When you look at issues, particularly climate change, you look at issues of renewable energy, the just transition that South Africa is going through, and knowing that China is one of the pioneers when it comes to renewable energy, with countries such as Saudi Arabia that have applied to form part of BRICS and within the renewable energy space, what can we anticipate from an economic aspect when these two presidents meet? We know that in FOCAC in 2018, Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan was tasked with meeting the various state-owned electricity and energy companies within China to try and find solutions to South Africa's crumbling power utility Eskom.
To demonstrate China's commitment to help South Africa with the energy crisis, you know, I was told that ahead of the summit, when there was a to and fro in terms of whether you move the summit to another country because of the energy challenges and the Putin matter, or you do it virtual, it was President Xi Jinping who insisted that I support South Africa. South Africa must be a host and it must be in person. And therefore, I am even willing to assist if you think you need support on any matter, including the issue of the energy crisis. And therefore, the commitment is there. The issues now is that China is still using a lot of coal from South Africa, and therefore you have to really be careful, as Gwede Mantashe would put it, that you don't do it abrupt, because you'll end up with a bigger crisis, unemployment, and the economy of South Africa collapsing. On the other hand, you need this electricity to power the economy, and therefore you have to strike the balance. And that is why often there's this contestation between the Minister of Enterprise, who is responsible for Eskom, and the person who's supposed to power the energy, Minister Gwede Mantashe. So they have to find synergy. Minister Pravin was in China recently, and these are the issues that was high on the agenda. And the Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank, when I spoke to the Vice President a few weeks ago, he said they are going to make a major announcement. And I saw the former President of Brazil accompanying the President of Brazil, who is now the President of the bank. I think those will be the issues.
Thank you very much. Also, we will definitely be looking out for those discussions with myself, Sophie Mokoena, and also Mr. Ntebu Mokobo, who will be reporting for radio. The issue of energy is going to be central, knowing that Gwede Mantashe is perceived as a fossil fuel dinosaur. You've also got the ministers such as Barbara Creasing, who are pushing for renewable energy, and particularly with issues pertaining to climate change. We've got the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Ramaphosa Ramaphosa, who's also been to China recently to look at various ways and engage with the China state-owned enterprises in order to try and resolve South Africa's energy crisis. The hot topic, energy, electricity, just transition. It's going to be geopolitics, and also the issue of President Vladimir Putin, the International Criminal Court, the de-dollarization, the new BRICS currency, and also threatening the South-to-South relations.